We didn't expect the first betrayal to look so polished. A realtor's bright smile, a couple dressed for a Saturday museum visit, two parents standing in the hallway like they belonged there. Evelyn Brooks's experience matters because the sharpest family control rarely arrives as a threat. Sometimes it arrives as paperwork, practiced manners, and a door that opens the wrong way. What followed was her voice. The first thing I saw when I unlocked my door was a stranger's smile in my hallway. The realtor stood a step inside the threshold like she'd done this 1,000 times. Behind her, a man in a neat coat kept glancing past her shoulder, already mapping my living room. The woman beside him held her phone up, quietly taking photos of my entryway. And then I saw my parents, my mother, Linda, chin lifted, arms folded, my father, Robert, leaning against the wall with that small grin he saved for moments when he thought I couldn't say no. The realtor shifted her folder. Perfect timing. We're doing a showing for this unit. Linda stepped forward, voice loud enough for the strangers. For the penthouse, listed at $1.28 million. Robert's grin widened. It sells today. Matthew needs it. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. My hand stayed on the doorknob, like I could hold the whole scene in place if I stayed calm. Linda's tone softened into that familiar sweetness. Your brother's debt is $460,000. The lawsuit deadline is next week. We're handling it. Robert's eyes narrowed at my silence. Don't embarrass yourself. Cooperate. The couple exchanged one of those polite looks people share when they realize they walked into something private. I nodded once. Go ahead. The realtor's shoulders dropped with relief and she launched into her script about private elevator access and lake views, talking like my home was already a product. The man walked toward my windows. The woman kept filming. Careful, quiet. Robert leaned closer, voice low. Good. You're finally being reasonable. I slipped to the side and watched them drift through my living room. When the realtor stepped back toward the entry, I held out my hand. Can I get your card? She brightened. Absolutely. She placed it in my palm. I didn't look at it. I just folded it and tucked it into my pocket. Then I turned to the couple. I'm sorry for the confusion. This is my residence. There's a legal issue being addressed today. The man froze. The woman lowered her phone like it suddenly weighed too much. Robert cut in. Sharper now. She's being dramatic. Everything is already handled. We saw the realtor's smile tighten, and the hallway turn quiet in the space between one word and the next. I reached for my keys. Great. Then we'll all look at the paperwork in person. Linda's eyes flicked to Robert. Just for a beat. I walked past them without another word. Some stories keep moving because people speak up when silence feels familiar. The elevator ride down felt longer than it was. I stood there staring at the mirrored wall, watching my own face stay calm while my hands shook just enough to notice. My phone buzzed before I reached the lobby. Evelyn. Matthew's voice sounded tired, practiced. Dad told me you were home. I stepped outside, cold air hitting my cheeks. You knew about the showing. A pause. Traffic passed behind me. Somewhere a bus hissed to a stop. I didn't plan it, he said. They just said you'd understand. I always do. He exhaled hard. I'm in trouble, real trouble. I leaned against the building's stone wall. Say the number. Silence again. Then, quieter. 460,000. And the lawsuit. They file next week. I closed my eyes. I could see my living room the way the buyers had looked at it, already rearranging furniture that wasn't theirs. Matthew's voice dropped. You have time. You have space. I just need help. We noticed how quickly that word showed up. We thought, help, dressed up as inevitability. I'm not a line of credit. I told him. His tone shifted, sharper now. You're my sister. I'm also the owner. He didn't answer. The call ended without a goodbye. I sat in my car for a minute before turning the key. My parents' words replayed themselves, layered and neat. Cooperate. Handled. Family comes first. At the first red light, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Sweetheart," Linda began, already smoothing the edges. "Your brother's scared. I'm driving to Whitaker's office." A beat. "There's no need for that." "I want to see the paperwork." Robert's voice cut in, louder. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." The light turned green. Then it should be easy to explain. Neither of them spoke after that. I drove the rest of the way in silence, hands steady now, the card from the realtor pressing against my leg like a reminder I didn't plan to forget. The receptionist looked up when I walked in, then looked past me, like she was checking who I belonged to. "I'm here to see Thomas Whitaker." Her fingers paused above the keyboard. "Do you have an appointment?" "My parents do." I set my keys on the counter. "But I'm the owner." That landed. Not loud. Just enough. She nodded once and disappeared down the hallway. Whitaker came out a minute later, jacket buttoned, expression already arranged. "Evelyn." "This is a surprise." "I'd like a current property record," I told him. "Printed today." He smiled the way people do when they plan to talk you out of something. "Your parents said everything was agreed upon." I didn't agree. A small silence settled between us. He gestured toward his office. I followed. Whitaker sat, turned his screen slightly away, then back again, like he was deciding how much I needed to see. His fingers moved, clicking, pausing, clicking again. Then they stopped. He leaned closer to the monitor. The room felt tight, like the air had changed without permission. "There's a lock," he said quietly. "A what?" "An owner alert lock." He cleared his throat. "Transfer restricted." I stayed still. "When?" His eyes flicked to the timestamp. "This morning." Right before the showing. My chest went cold, but my voice stayed level. "Read it." He hesitated, then scrolled. "Owner alert. Verify identity. Do not process instruments presented by third parties." We noticed the way the words slowed the room down. Paperwork has a sound when it stops people mid-sentence. Whitaker's phone vibrated on the desk. He glanced at it and didn't answer. This wasn't a mistake. I said, "They tried to file something." He didn't argue. He didn't confirm. He just sat there, jaw tight, staring at the screen like it had betrayed him. The phone buzzed again. This time, he picked it up. "Yes," he said, softer now. I watched his face change, the confidence draining in small steps. He ended the call and looked at me differently. That was the recorder's office. I nodded. Then we should keep going. Whitaker reached for the printer, slower than before. Outside his window, traffic moved like nothing in the world had shifted. Inside, it already had. Whitaker turned the screen toward me this time. Not all the way. Just enough. There was an attempted filing. He said, "Power document, emergency claim, emergency." I repeated. He nodded. Uncomfortable. The note says the owner was unreachable. I let that sit. I was home. His mouth tightened. He scrolled again. Slower now. That claim is what triggered the alert. The system doesn't like urgency without contact. The printer hummed behind us, then went quiet. Neither of us moved to grab the page. My phone buzzed on the desk. My mother's name lit the screen. I didn't pick it up. Whitaker glanced at it anyway. They're probably on their way, I figured. He leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Evelyn, these things can sometimes be misunderstandings. They brought buyers into my hallway." That stopped him. We noticed how still the room went after that. Not dramatic, just fixed. The door opened without a knock. My parents stepped in like they'd been invited. Robert held a folder, thick and neat. Linda's smile looked practiced, almost hopeful. "There you are," she said. "We told him you'd come around." Robert placed the folder on the desk. "Everything's ready. Listing agreement? Authority forms? You sign. We're done." Whitaker didn't touch it. I reached out first, resting my hand flat on the folder. Before anything else, I said, I want copies of everything you brought. Linda laughed once. Sharp. Copies. For what? For my records? Robert leaned forward. This is getting ridiculous. Whitaker cleared his throat. As the owner, she's entitled to review documents presented in her name. That was the first time he said it out loud. Owner. I opened the folder and flipped the top page. My name was printed at the bottom. The signature looked familiar in a way that felt wrong. Too smooth, too careful. I turned another page, then another. Who notarized this? I asked. Linda waved a hand. It's handled. Whitaker's eyes stayed on the paper. I'll need to verify. Robert's voice hardened. No, you don't. Whitaker didn't look at him. He reached for the phone instead. The room shifted again. Quieter this time. Like something had already crossed a line none of them could pull back from. Whitaker dialed with one hand and held the file open with the other. The phone rang once. Twice. Robert shifted in his chair. This is unnecessary. Whitaker didn't look up. It'll be quick. The line clicked. This is Crane. Thomas Whitaker. Whitaker said evenly, I'm calling to verify a notary commission number. Linda crossed her arms. You don't need to do this. We've already wasted enough time. Whitaker read the number off the page, slow and careful. There was a pause on the other end. Not a long one. Just long enough. That commission expired last year. Crane said, I haven't notarized anything since. The room went still. Not shocked. Stopped, Whitaker asked. Did you notarize a power document for Evelyn Brooks today? No, Crane answered. Firmer now. Absolutely not. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. Robert stared straight ahead, jaw locked. We noticed how no one rushed to speak after that. Silence can feel heavier than shouting. Whitaker ended the call and set the phone down. He turned the page again, slower this time, like the paper might change if he gave it space. This signature, he said, tapping lightly near my name. It wasn't witnessed here. Robert leaned forward. She signed it earlier. I shook my head. I didn't. Linda's voice cracked. You're twisting this. I slid the page toward Whitaker. Read it again. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. The stroke pattern's off. Too even. Robert pushed back from the desk. This is ridiculous. You're letting her derail everything. Whitaker didn't rise to the volume. This office can't proceed with unverified instruments. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Linda's tone softened. Desperate now. Evelyn, your brother's about to lose everything. I met her eyes. You brought buyers into my home. Whitaker stood and walked to the cabinet, pulling out a scanner tray. I'm making copies of everything presented. Robert shot to his feet. You're not doing that. Whitaker turned back, voice tight. I am now. The machine whirred to life. Page by page, the file disappeared into it. I watched my name pass through the glass, flattened and copied like evidence instead of permission. Something settled in me then. Not relief, not anger. Just clarity. This wasn't about saving Matthew. It was about how far they'd already gone. Whitaker didn't sit back down. He stayed standing, one hand on the desk, the other near his phone like he expected it to ring again. Robert paced the length of the office, 2 steps out, 2 steps back. Linda stayed where she was, arms tight across her chest, eyes fixed on the floor. This is getting out of control, Robert muttered. We're family. Whitaker glanced at me, then back at the file. That's not what the recorder's office cares about. His phone vibrated. He answered on the first ring. Yes. He listened without interrupting, his face changing in small increments. The kind you miss if you're not looking for it. When the call ended, he didn't put the phone down right away. They're sending someone over, he said. Fraud prevention. Linda's head snapped up. For what? Whitaker exhaled slowly. Because an expired commission number was used, and because an emergency filing claimed the owner was unreachable. Robert stopped pacing. That's not fraud. Whitaker finally met his eyes. That's how it starts. The door handle rattled lightly as someone tried it from the outside. Then it opened. A man stepped in wearing a plain jacket, tablet tucked under one arm. He didn't scan the room. He checked the desk. The file. Who was standing, who wasn't? Daniel Reyes, he said, recorder's office. Whitaker gestured toward the chair by the door. Please. Reyes stayed where he was. I need everyone to remain seated. Robert scoffed. You can't. Reyes lifted a hand. Calm. I'm documenting. Not debating. We noticed how authority doesn't raise its voice. It just takes space. Reyes tapped his tablet. An instrument was submitted today for a property registered to Evelyn Brooks. The submission used an expired notary commission and an identity claim asserting the owner was unreachable. Linda shook her head fast. We were helping our son. Reyes didn't look at her. Family fraud is the most common type we see. The words landed and stayed there. He turned to me. Are you authorizing any sale or transfer of your residence today? No. Reyes nodded once. He typed, then looked back at Robert. You directed the submission. Robert's jaw worked. We were protecting the family. Reyes's tone didn't change. This isn't family court. Whitaker shifted, clearing his throat. What happens now? I place an official hold, Reyes replied, and I preserve what's been presented. He looked down at his tablet again. It chimed. His eyes narrowed. Just slightly. There's a second alert, he said. The room seemed to tilt. Not enough to fall, just enough to notice. I watched his screen light up. Another property. He continued. Related. My breath caught before I could stop it. Reyes looked up. It's in your family's name. Then, quieter. Not yours. He paused. Your daughter's. The room didn't react right away. It took a second for the words to land. My daughter's, I repeated. Reyes turned the tablet slightly so Whitaker could see. A custodial property. Lake Cabin. Transfer attempt logged this afternoon. Linda made a small sound. Sharp and thin. That's impossible. Robert didn't speak. He stared at the screen like it had personally insulted him. I felt something pull tight in my chest. She's 6. Reyes nodded, which is why this alert escalated immediately. Whitaker's hands shook as he reached for the edge of the desk. There shouldn't be anything filed under a minor without court approval. Reyes scrolled, That's correct, which is why this submission triggered a priority flag. Linda stepped forward, voice breaking. We didn't touch her things. Reyes finally looked at her. Someone did. He tapped again. The method matches the earlier filing. Same notary. Same urgency language. We noticed how the air changed when the pattern became visible. 1 incident could be denied. 2 felt deliberate. I swallowed. A memory surfaced. The trustee. A year earlier. Sitting across from me. Hands folded. This structure isn't about taxes. He'd said. It's about protection. At the time, I'd thought he was being dramatic. Robert leaned forward now, palms flat on the desk. You're turning this into something it's not. Reyes didn't shift. Involving a minor makes it something else. Whitaker cleared his throat, too loudly. I have a folder. Linda's head snapped toward him. What folder? Whitaker hesitated, then moved to the cabinet and pulled out a thin file. He set it down carefully, like it might bruise. You brought this in last week, he told Linda. Asked for a review. Her face drained. I didn't know what it was. Robert's voice cut through. Stop talking. Reyes opened the folder. His finger paused on a page. This document lists a beneficiary name. He looked up at me. Is this your daughter's full legal name? Yes. The word came out steady. I didn't feel steady. Reyes closed the file. I'm placing an immediate protective hold on this property. Linda sank into the chair, hands covering her mouth. Robert stood rigid, eyes hard, calculating. Reyes typed for a moment, then looked up. Because a minor is involved. I'm referring this to law enforcement. The room went quiet again, not shocked, exposed. I looked at my parents, both of them avoiding my eyes now. They hadn't been trying to save my brother. They'd been trying to erase anything they couldn't control. The knock came soft, almost polite. Whitaker looked up first. They're here. 2 officers stepped in. Calm, efficient. No rush. One of them nodded at Reyes, then scanned the room like he was counting exits. Not people. Mr. Brooks, the taller one said, eyes on my father. We need you to remain seated. Robert laughed once, sharp and empty. This is harassment. The officer didn't react. He opened a notebook instead. We're responding to a referral involving suspected fraudulent filings and a minor's protected property. Linda's shoulders started shaking. She pressed her hands together like that might keep them steady. We were trying to help our son. Reyes stayed quiet. He didn't need to add anything. Whitaker slid the copied documents across the desk. These are the materials presented today. One officer flipped through the pages. Slow. He stopped at the notary block, then at the signature. He glanced at his partner. Just once. We noticed how the room stopped belonging to the family right then. Not because anyone raised their voice. Because no one needed to. The officer looked up at me. Ms. Brooks, we'll need a statement. I'm available. Robert pushed back his chair. You're really doing this? I met his eyes. You brought strangers into my hallway. The officers moved closer, not threatening, just present. Sir, please sit. He didn't argue again. While they worked, Reyes leaned toward me. I recommend changing your building access and securing your mail. I will. Linda whispered my name. Barely sound. I didn't turn. Forms were filled, questions asked, dates confirmed. The officers nodded, thanked Whitaker, and guided my parents toward the door. Robert paused, looking back at me with something hard and unfinished. This isn't over. I stayed where I was. It is for me. The door closed behind them. The room felt larger after. I gathered my keys. The realtor's card still folded in my pocket. By the time I stepped outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, just finally mine. I got home after dark. The lobby was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. The security desk nodded at me like usual, but something had shifted. I could feel it in my shoulders. They weren't tight anymore. Upstairs, I set my bag down and stood in the middle of the living room. No buyers, no voices. Just the low hum of the building and the city far below the windows. My phone buzzed once. A message from Whitaker. Recorder's office confirmed. All properties flagged. No movement without your authorization. I typed back. Thank you. Then turned the phone face down. I walked through the apartment slowly, touching things I hadn't looked at all day. The back of the chair, the edge of the counter. Ordinary proof that the space was still mine. I sat on the couch and let the quiet stretch. We noticed how the silence didn't feel empty. It felt settled. Another message came in. This one from Matthew. I didn't know it would go this far. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I wrote. It already had. I didn't add anything else. I changed the building access codes before bed, called the front desk and updated the authorized list. The woman on the line asked if everything was okay. Yes, I said. And for once, it wasn't a cover. Later, I stood by my daughter's photo on the bookshelf, her crooked smile, missing tooth. I rested my thumb against the frame and breathed. No speeches, no final confrontations, just locks that held. The next morning, the mail arrived with nothing unexpected in it. No notices, no pressure disguised as love. I made coffee and watched the city wake up. They didn't lose me that day. They lost the ability to touch anything that carried my name. And that was enough. I woke up before the alarm and didn't rush to check my phone. The apartment held its shape around me, quiet, unbothered. I made coffee, stood by the window, watched the lake take on that dull gray that means the day will be slow. There was nothing to fix. No message waiting to pull me back into it. I thought about Clara, about how I'd tucked her name into systems instead of promises. That felt right now. Solid. Enough. By noon, I emailed my building manager, confirmed the access list, and closed my laptop. The rest of the afternoon stayed open. What changed wasn't the family. It was how I stood inside my own life. Evelyn Brooks doesn't need permission anymore. She keeps records. She keeps keys. She keeps space. If this moment felt familiar, stay with it a little longer. Some stories aren't loud when they end. They just finally let you breathe. We listened as she said that last part softly, like someone realizing the room would stay quiet even after she left it.